Ernie Barnes was a former NFL player. He played for the Jets. But after football, he found art as being, I guess, part of his livelihood. And we all are familiar with Sugar Shack, and there's some other well-known pieces, but my father and Ernie made friends, and he was able to purchase this piece. And this actually sat on top of our fire mantle in our home in Santa Barbara, California.
Few artists have captured movement, soul, and struggle the way Ernie Barnes did. Before he ever picked up a paintbrush, Barnes was a professional football player, a man of strength and discipline who played for the Denver Broncos, San Diego Chargers, and later the New York Jets. But when his football career ended, he traded the roar of the crowd for the rhythm of the canvas, and what emerged was art that pulsed with life. The painting here is an oil-on canvas titled 4th and 1, which was created in 1971, the same year as Sugar Shack. Its name, drawn from football lingo, perfectly fits the tense action it depicts: players mid-collision, muscles taut, helmets clashing. It's a vivid reflection of Barnes's two worlds, art and athletics. Born in the segregated South, Barnes broke racial barriers both on the field and in the art world. His figures, elongated, muscled, and full of motion, expressed not just physical intensity, but deep emotion. His most famous work, Sugar Shack in 1971, became an icon of black culture and was once auctioned for $15 million. It was featured in the sitcom Good Times and on Marvin Gaye's 1976 album cover, I Want You. He was later named the official artist of the 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Games, cementing his place as one of America's great visual storytellers. Also featured was a catalogue of Barnes's works, including a biographical sketch by Alex Haley, author of Roots, one of the many notable collectors who admired Barnes's genius.
This piece wouldn't fall into that category just because it wasn't on Good Times for so many years and it wasn't on Marvin Gaye's album, but it's still a very valuable piece, I think. If I were to put a value on it for insurance purposes, I would make this around $650,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Awesome piece.
Amazing.
So I brought a painting that belonged to my grandparents. It hung in their home, it hung in my parents' home, and it's been hanging in my living room for the past 20 years. I know it's Fern Coppedge, and Lehigh Valley, Delaware Gap area is the scenes that inspired it. The painting had been purchased by my grandparents, my father's father, and we believe they purchased it at a auction or fundraiser for Lafayette College, which is also in Easton, Pennsylvania.
Not many artists painted winter with as much warmth and emotion as Fern Coppedge. This canvas, titled December Mist, captures the quiet poetry of a Pennsylvania winter, soft snow, delicate color shifts, and the serene charm of the Lehigh Valley and Delaware Gap. Though now slightly darkened with age, the piece still glows with her signature love for color and light. Fern grew up on a farm before moving to California at 13, where her passion for art first bloomed. Her formal training began at McPherson College and the University of Kansas, then deepened at the Art Institute of Chicago, and later the Art Students League in New York, where she studied under William Merritt Chase. She also trained at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts with Daniel Garber, one of her closest mentors. By 1920, Coppedge had settled in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, the heart of the Pennsylvania Impressionist movement, and joined the Philadelphia 10, a pioneering group of female artists who defied the male-dominated art world of their time. The Philadelphia 10, also known as the 10, was a group of American female artists who exhibited together from 1917 to 1945. December Mist is an oil on canvas, likely in its original frame, painted around the 1920s. Coppedge, known for painting outdoors, even in freezing conditions wrapped in a bearskin coat, brought emotion to every snowflake she rendered. Her work often edged toward fauvism, using bold purples, blues, and expressive color to turn simple landscapes into living, breathing moments of beauty.
Is oil on canvas.
So I assume it's the original frame.
I do think it's the original frame, yes. This is the typical kind of subject matter that she loved. She loved the snow. She would even go out and paint in a bear skin. She would paint en plein air, which means paint outside.
Right.
She was very much into the reality of the moment. The group of female artists with whom she was associated was called the Philadelphia 10. It was a group of progressive female artists who basically supported each other in the otherwise kind of boys' club of artists during that time. And they would exhibit together and work together from the 1920s into the 1930s. She exhibited widely during the time, and she was respected, even though women artists didn't have as much visibility, I would say, as some of the major male artists like Redfield and Garber, who was her teacher and one of her closest artist friends. It really celebrates everything that she saw. She would even tie her canvases up in between trees.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
She was intrepid. Her market has been doing very well recently.
Oh.
I would insure this for no less than $120,000.
Oh, really? Wow. Wow. Okay. That's worth insuring. I was not expecting that.
We got it in Massachusetts in late 70s. My husband spotted it at an antique shop.
Do you recall what you paid for it?
I think it was somewhere around $1,200, but honest to goodness, I don't remember.
You know who the artist is, however.
Yes, I do. It's Armin Carl Hansen.
Right.
And he was noted as the Monterey artist.
He painted the sea like he'd lived 1,000 storms, because he had. Armin Carl Hansen, born in San Francisco in 1886, was a man whose art was as powerful as his presence. Standing 6'4" and weighing 250 pounds, he carried the same intensity that flowed through every canvas he touched. Trained first by his father, Hermann Wendelbourg Hansen, a renowned painter of the American West, Armin grew up surrounded by art and adventure. After studying at the California School of Design, his path took a dramatic turn when the San Francisco earthquake devastated his hometown. At just 20, he left for Germany, immersing himself in German Impressionism, before spending 4 years at sea as a crewman on a Norwegian trawler. Those years shaped his vision. The vastness of the ocean, the grit of fishermen, and the raw power of nature became the soul of his paintings. When Hansen returned to California in 1912, he settled in Monterey, where he became one of America's most celebrated en plein air marine artists. His works vividly captured two worlds he knew best, life at sea and life in the West. The painting here, likely from the late 1910s or early 1920s, shows sailors battling a storm, waves crashing over the deck. Its dark, dramatic palette and impressionist brushstrokes perfectly embody Hansen's signature, the meeting of man, sea, and struggle.
Late 19-teens or early 1920s. The people are on the deck, they're being hit by a storm, the waves are washing over the deck, and it's a particularly nice example of his work. It's an impressionist brushstroke, but a kind of interesting, dark and dramatic palette. A painting like this should sell at auction for between $50,000 and $75,000.
Oh my. Oh my.
I got them through my father-in-law. My wife and I inherited them. When he was 8 years old, he went to the Philippines with his family. They were mining engineers.
And approximately when would that have been?
This would have been mid-30s.
Okay.
The war came along, and all the civilians were taken into an internment camp, Santa Tomas, in Manila. He went into the internment camp at age 15. He and the rest of the family were there, he and his sister, mother, father. Everyone was liberated when the Americans came in. He was 19. It was actually on his birthday. Some of the family decided to go back eventually and come back to the United States. And his mother stayed on in the Philippines for a number of years. When she felt it was time to come back, apparently she collected pieces that made her feel like what she saw. She enjoyed living there.
Sure.
It's my understanding.
Fernando Amorsolo, the man revered as the grand old man of Philippine art, was among few artists who captured the spirit of a nation beautifully. Amorsolo was the first artist ever honored as a national artist of the Philippines. recognized for his pioneering use of impressionistic technique and masterful handling of light and backlighting. His radiant portrayals of rural life, from farmers in the fields to women washing clothes by the river, became symbols of Filipino identity, reflecting the country's warmth, simplicity, and pride. Trained at the University of the Philippines, where he later became a professor, Amorsolo also worked for the Bureau of Public Works and became one of the most prolific painters of the 20th century. His works often found their way abroad through American soldiers and travelers, becoming cherished mementos of the Philippines' charm and resilience. These two oil-on-board paintings, both dated 1955, perfectly reflect his artistic legacy. The small one depicts a laundress, a subject Amorsolo painted often, celebrating the beauty of everyday life. The other, a harvesting scene, shows laborers gathering rice under the warm Philippine sun, rendered with his signature golden glow. These paintings weren't just art. They were love letters to a homeland rebuilding itself after war scenes that reminded every viewer, whether Filipino or foreign, of the enduring spirit of a people and the light that never faded from their land.
Beginning of his career and middle part of his career, he was more highly regarded probably by outsiders or Europeans or Americans. More recently, especially in the last 10 years, we've seen a big change in the market for his work. There's been this repatriation of Filipino artists and their work. And in the case of Amorsolo, he was the first sort of national painter of the Philippines. He was honored with that posthumously. Collectors consider him to have captured sort of the essence or the soul of the Philippines with his subjects. Nowadays, his work is very sought after. Do you know how much she paid for the works?
I have not a clue.
How many paintings did she collect?
I think at least 10 pieces.
Were they distributed among family members, or just did most of them pass to you?
Most of them passed to us.
Okay. For both of the paintings together, I would suggest a conservative auction estimate of $120,000 to $180,000.
That's a bit more than I was expecting.
The smaller example, I would estimate in the range of $40,000 to $60,000.
I am very surprised.
The larger harvest scene, I would put an auction estimate of $80,000 to $120,000.
Okay.
I saw you approaching me at the paintings table with this chair. I thought possibly you'd been misdirected, but it seems there was a reason.
The chair kind of goes with the collection because the chair belonged to Norman Rockwell and the paintings are by Norman Rockwell.
It's not every day someone walks in carrying a simple wooden chair, only for it to turn out to be the very seat once used by Norman Rockwell, one of America's most beloved illustrators. Rockwell, born in 1894 in New York City, became famous for his heartwarming and sharply detailed depictions of everyday American life. Over his career, he painted 322 covers for the Saturday Evening Post, illustrated the Boy Scout calendar for 50 years, and during World War II, his 4 Freedoms paintings became symbols of American hope. Despite critics once dismissing his work as too sentimental, Rockwell's art became a mirror of the nation's character, and in 1977 he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Here are 2 small original paintings he created. These portraits, created during Rockwell's collaboration with Kellogg's Corn Flakes, captures the artist's signature realism and warmth, though it was never used. Accompanying the painting was a handwritten letter from Rockwell himself, thanking the young model for her patience. And then, that chair, the same one visible in one of Rockwell's most recognized works. It wasn't just furniture. It was part of the creative space where some of America's most iconic art came to life.
Have you any thoughts about what the value of these pieces might be?
About 30 years ago, I acquired the painting, and at that time I had it appraised. And I think they said it was worth about maybe $35,000.
Right. Which I think back then was most likely an insurance figure.
Probably.
Yeah, if you're having
I
that.
don't know.
I would say for insurance, you're probably looking at somewhere in the sort of $80,000, $90,000 range.
Okay.
The record is now around about 15 million.
Yes.
And this piece here is a reproduction print, and there's no intrinsic value to
No.
that. The letter with it adds value to it. I would think probably a few $100 for a signed letter from Rockwell. The chair. How did you come by the chair?
My dad was always bringing stuff home that Norman was throwing out.
And here, interestingly, there's a chair there, and here it is again here in one of his best-known works.
Right.
How much do you think the chair might be worth?
I have no idea.
Well, candidly, nor do I.
Yeah.
So I spoke to my fellow appraisers in the collectibles area, and they told me it would make at least $50,000.
You are kidding. Oh,
But
my goodness.
It's pretty iconic, really, from this painting, and to think of the amazing paintings that he did when he was sitting in this chair.
I thought maybe a couple of $1,000.
A little bit more, apparently. I would have been very disappointed coming to the Midwest and not seeing work by the regionalist artists. And so I was thrilled when you came in the door with these three works. We have John Stuart Curry, we have Grant Wood. And can you perhaps tell me a little bit about how you came by these works?
Well, my grandmother went to school with Grant Wood in Iowa and remained his friend. And when she married my grandfather, he came to know Grant Wood too, and they supported him. They bought several works of art from him earlier in his career. And then when John Stuart Curry became artist in residence at the university here in 1936, they got to know him too.
They were artists who turned their gaze away from Paris and painted the soul of America instead. In the heart of the Great Depression, a movement known as regionalism rose, a celebration of the American Midwest, its farms, rivers, and people. Among its leading voices were Grant Wood and John Stuart Curry, two painters whose works captured the grit and grace of everyday life far from the glamour of European modernism. Grant Wood, born in 1891 near Anamosa, Iowa, was a craftsman, designer, and painter best remembered for his iconic American Gothic. Trained in Paris and influenced by the precise realism of 16th-century German and Flemish masters, Wood returned home to embrace a sharply detailed, distinctly American style. The work presented here, though smaller in scale, carries his hallmark, realism infused with quiet strength, a piece far removed from the rolling Iowa hills he often painted. Beside it is a lyrical landscape by John Stuart Curry, born in 1897 in Kansas. Curry's art reflected the social tensions of the 1930s, portraying the life and drama of the Midwest with bold, emotional storytelling. Known for works like Tornado over Kansas and Baptism in Kansas, Curry began his career illustrating Western pulp magazines before studying art in Europe. The small piece here, a serene reflection of a river, reveals a softer, contemplative side of his artistry, along with a delicate still life of zinnias, both created in 1930s. Together, these works honor the painters who made America their muse.
They're not typical works, but obviously these are major American artists, so this will still certainly have some value. The John Stuart Curry at auction, $25,000 to $40,000. This one, I'm going to say $2,000 to $3,000 at auction. And for the Grant Wood, it's a terrific thing, but a long way from the rolling hills, etc., which frankly have made millions at auction. A painting like this still would make, I would think, quite comfortably $50,000 to $80,000.
That's
Now,
great.
it would not surprise me the way the market is going for Grant Wood if it even made more than that.
It was my grandparents' painting. My grandfather bought a house in Shaker Heights on South Park. It was a pretty big house. He got it on a foreclosure. My grandmother needed to put a lot of paintings on the walls because it was a big house. So I think in the late 40s, early 50s, she went shopping and bought a whole bunch of different paintings. A lot of them very nice. This is one of them.
Any idea what she paid for it?
No idea. After they passed away, my one aunt came to own this painting. And then when she sold her house, she gave it to me.
He painted mornings the way poets write them, soft, hushed, and almost breathing. Edward Dufner, known as the painter of sunshine, was one of America's refined impressionists and belonged to that rare group of artists who could turn atmosphere into emotion. In Hazy Morning, painted around 1920, He captured not just a scene, but a feeling, the quiet exhale of nature before the day fully wakes. Dufner trained at the Art Students League in New York before further sharpening his craft in Paris under the tutelage of prominent French masters. Dufner created some of his most atmospheric works by the early 1900s when he moved to the art colony at Woodstock, New York. It was here, surrounded by rolling hills, morning mist, and gentle rivers, this oil painting, likely done around the 1920s, bathed the viewer in soft pastels and a diaphanous veil of mist. Trees dissolve into the distance, their outlines blurred by moisture in the air. The ground glows in warm greens and golds, while the sky and fog blend seamlessly into one another with the swans in the lake. The painting reflects Dufner's signature style, harmony, restraint, and a masterful understanding of how light shapes mood. Works like this earned him praise at major exhibitions, including the National Academy of Design and the Paris Salon. He became an associate of the National Academy in 1910 and a full academician in 1929. Hazy Morning stands today as a quiet masterpiece, a window into the American Impressionist dreamscape, one where nature speaks softly and beauty hides in the early hours of the day.
Also going for it, this is probably the original frame. Probably this and the painting are from the early 1920s. He really painted like this throughout the rest of his life. And this is just what you look for when you look for a Dufner. If I were to put this through an auction, I would estimate it at $15,000 to $25,000.
Okay, not bad.
This was a painting that my grandmother had. I inherited it in 1992. I have a lot of siblings, so we sort of had to divide up the paintings. And most of my grandma's paintings were sort of contemporary artists in the 60s and 70s, but the subject matter were all very traditional.
Some artists paint what they see. Orville Bulman painted what he felt, a world full of joy, rhythm, color, and playful fantasy. Born not from formal training, but from a deeply imaginative soul who created his own universe on canvas. Bulman's story is as surprising as his art. He was born in 1904 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and he spent years working in the family business. What started as a distraction grew into a calling. By the time he was in his early 20s, Bulman had begun exhibiting his work and quickly became known for his early regionalist scenes of Midwestern life. The painting here was created around 1960 and is a perfect example of that period of his visit to Haiti. A bright tropical palette, playful characters, and the unmistakable charm of his Caribbean-inspired compositions. His brushwork is confident yet light, his perspective intentionally stylized, giving his scenes a floating, magical quality. Bulman once said that in painting, he preferred happiness over realism. By the 1960s, Bulman's paintings were in high demand. Collectors that included celebrities, governors, and prominent cultural figures like the Duchess of Windsor, John Kennedy, and Gerald Ford. Bulman passed away in 1978. But works like this remain some of the most cherished pieces from mid-century American art.
He's somebody that has always been appreciated, but in recent years, his works have become more desired. This is an oil on canvas painting. In looking at it, there is a little bit of flaking here, and there's a little bit of cracking up here in the sky. So in the condition that it's in, it might affect the value slightly. The retail value might be $20,000 to $25,000, and once conserved, you might be able to ask as much as $35,000.
Oh, wow. And how much would it cost to have it reconditioned?
I think a conservator could clean the painting and consolidate some of the cracking and touch up at this area there for less than $2,000.
Oh, okay.
painting of We're Not Even Here.
Okay. We've put together a little Bob Ross Appreciation Society today. So I'm a fan, and I actually didn't think that I'd ever possibly either see one in person or ever have a hope of perhaps finding one for sale somewhere. They just never come up for auction, and trust me, I keep my eyes out. This is kind of a big deal for me personally. I watched when I was a kid, and he's the reason I picked up a paintbrush for the first time. So people have a very emotional connection. Look, I'm tearing up. People have such an emotional connection to Bob. And you can say whatever you want, whether you like the scenes or you don't, or they're your style, but he's therapy for so many people, and people love him. So his paintings sell for a lot of money. I'm holding one of your paintings, so you have two, and you each have another Bob Ross. How did you get him?
Oh, my parents got him in the 70s.
Quonset hut sale. Salvation Army.
It was a Christmas gift to my parents in the 1970s.
There are few artists whose early life shaped their artistic spirit quite like Bob Ross, and the Alaskan landscapes he painted during his Air Force years reflect that transformation beautifully. Long before his calming television presence, Ross was a master sergeant in the U.S. Air Force, stationed at Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska. It was there that he first encountered snow-capped mountains and wilderness vista scenes that would later define his signature style. Ross's first art class came at a USO club in Anchorage, which ignited his passion for painting. He supplemented his military income by painting Alaskan landscapes on gold prospecting pans, novelty pieces that tourists loved. He sold them quickly, sometimes doing them in his lunch break before returning in the afternoon to sell. During this period, Ross also discovered the alla prima wet-on-wet oil painting technique, inspired by German painter Bill Alexander. This method allowed him to complete a full landscape in a short time, a skill that would later become central to his TV work. The pieces here are oil on canvas from that Alaskan period, likely painted in the late 1960s or early 1970s. Its subject, Alaskan wilderness, often featuring mountains, forests, maybe even a cabin or aurora borealis. All motifs Ross fell in love with during his service. After retiring in 1981, Ross turned fully to painting, eventually launching The Joy of Painting in 1983. But these Alaskan works carry a very different emotional weight. They are not just landscapes, they are memories of his early artistic awakening.
Bonanza of Bob Ross paintings in Alaska that I'm so excited to find out about because I didn't know. One of the things I wanted to point out is he actually specifically says on the stretcher stamps that all of your paintings have, which is how we know these are his from the 70s, he calls them Alaskan oil paintings because that's what they were back in the day. So it's a little tricky because these were not on the show, and most of the prices we have are from paintings that were on the show. In the current marketplace, Bob Ross paintings like this would sell in the $15,000 to $25,000 range.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
How much did you guys pay? Do we have any prices here? So you inherited $12. You win, I think.
Mine was $5.
$5
At the Quonset Hut.
Paintings from the TV series sell in a certain range. There was one that recently did $41,000, and the most expensive one that we've heard of was from the very first TV show, and that did 6 figures.
Oh my.
From humble beginnings came The Joy of Painting, which was obviously a beloved franchise for PBS, so we're keeping it in the family today.
It's my mom, painted when she was 4 years old by an artist named Adelaide Chase from Boston. What I heard growing up was everybody in Boston had their portraits painted by Adelaide Chase at one period in time. We have a portrait of her mother, and on my dad's side, 2 portraits. Yeah.
Also painted by her.
Yes, right.
So there are 4 in the whole family.
Yeah.
That's really kind of amazing.
Yeah, 2 sides of the family.
Few portraitists of early 20th century Boston captured refinement, character, and social grace like Adelaide Cole Chase. Born in Boston in 1867, Chase inherited a deep artistic pedigree. Her father was the noted landscape painter J. Foxcroft Cole, and her mother was a Belgian pianist. From her youth, she was surrounded by art, even posing for Winslow Homer when she was just 10. Her formal training was extensive and elite. She studied under Frank Benson and Edmund C. Tarbell at the Boston Museum School, then went to Paris to attend the Académie Goulian, learning from Jean-Paul Laurent and Carolus Duran. Over her career, she specialized almost exclusively in portraiture, becoming one of the most respected society painters in Boston. The painting in question is an oil-on-canvas portrait from 1931, created by Chase at a mature stage in her career. Chase's style is strongly aligned with the Boston school. Her work shows a subtle, impressionistic touch, with a refined, delicate palette, tight but evocative brushwork, and a focus on the textures and character of her sitters. The portrait's frame also drew attention. It has a curved, hand-carved design by Walfrid Thulin, a prominent Boston framer at the time, which enhances both its historical and aesthetic value. Beyond this specific painting, Chase's broader legacy is significant. Her portraits of children, young people, and elders alike earned her a strong reputation, and she exhibited widely, including in Boston, at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and at the Art Institute of Chicago. She won silver medals at both the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair and the 1917 Panama Pacific Exposition in San Francisco. In short, the 1931 portrait is more than a family heirloom. It's a piece by a deeply trained, highly regarded artist whose refined portraiture and social standing give the work real cultural and market value.
You would ever want to separate it
Right.
because it's the quintessential Boston package. I know you would never sell your mother.
Right. No.
Never.
Yeah, in my younger years, maybe, but not at this point.
So for insurance purposes, I'd insure it for $32,000.
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Jason Crow.
You knew your mom was a winner.
Yeah. Gee, she did always say she was.
This is a painting that belonged to my in-laws, and it hung in their living room for a long time, and we inherited it from them when they passed.
How long ago did they acquire it?
They bought it in the, I believe, 40s or 50s, and I love the image. The composition is beautiful.
Imagine discovering a painting that quietly held decades of winter's hush and light. That's exactly what you have in this piece by George Gardner, Symons. Symons was born in Chicago around 1861 and became one of America's most admired plein-air painters. He studied at the Art Institute of Chicago, then journeyed to Europe, Munich, Paris, and London, where he absorbed Impressionist techniques and developed a keen eye for light. He later built a studio in California, but he split his time between New York, Massachusetts, and California, wherever nature called. What made Symons distinctive was how he blended Impressionism and realism, rendering landscapes, especially winter scenes, with both energy and clarity. He won major awards like the Carnegie Prize at the National Academy of Design in 1909, and his works are held in important collections. Now, onto your painting. It's an original oil on canvas, probably painted around 1920-ish, depicting 4 Mile Creek just east of where you are. The snow is beautifully handled. You can almost feel the cold and see the sun trying to break through. The composition guides your eye gently across the canvas, and the old frame looks to be the original, which adds to the piece's integrity. In short, this is not just a pretty picture. It's a work by one of America's finest plein-air masters, a quiet winter moment captured by an artist deeply in tune with nature.
Can I tell you about the painting as far as value? What do you think it's worth?
I don't know. My family, my husband's siblings seem to think it's worth an awful lot, but I mean maybe $3,000, $4,000.
Is the painting currently insured?
It is not, and we'd like to insure it. In fact, we need to insure it, yeah.
Well, I think based on the quality, an original oil painting by George Gardner Symons, Winter Glow, old frame, probably a period frame. As long as you've known it, the painting's been housed in this frame?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I think today, 2024, insurance value probably set at $12,000.
Oh, wonderful. All right, very good. Excellent, thank you.
I brought some Russian artwork by Constantine Korovin. My husband is a constant hunter, and we lived in Irvine, California at the time, and he was out estate sale shopping, and found them at an estate sale in Irvine, about 1993.
How much did he pay for them?
He said he paid $50 each.
An unexpected find at a flea market can sometimes turn into a brush with art history. That's exactly what happened here. These 3 oil-on-board paintings are by Constantine Korovin, one of Russia's foremost impressionist painters. Korovin studied at the Moscow School of Painting, Sculpture and Architecture, and was deeply involved in major Russian art movements of his day. He traveled widely, painting in France, Spain, and working with the Abramtsevo Art Circle, and by the mid-1880, he realized he was already painting in an impressionist style long before the formal movement took off in Russia. Later in life, Korovin faced hardship. His health deteriorated, and after a personal tragedy involving his son, he relocated to France in 1923. Around that time, he painted many of his most evocative works: scenes of Paris at night, nostalgic Russian winter landscapes, and tender groupings of musicians gathered around a campfire, all rendered with atmospheric light and emotional warmth. These pieces match those themes beautifully. One portrays a glittering Parisian night, another reflects a snowy Russian scene, and the third shows a circle of musicians by firelight, each with Korovin's signature brushwork and glowing color. Although these works are undated, they fit within the period after 1923 when Korovin settled in France and produced many of his most expressive compositions. These are the works of a master who bridged Russia and France, memory and light, through some of his most heartfelt work.
So he had a son who tragically lost his feet in a tramway accident.
Oh my gosh.
So he had to support his disabled son and himself. He went to France in 1923. There was a big exhibition planned of his paintings, and right before it was exhibited, all the paintings were stolen. So he was really left in a bad place, penniless. None of these are dated, but what he started to do is he painted these scenes basically after 1923 until his death in 1939. What we're looking at are 3 subject matters that he enjoyed painting and that he painted a lot after he moved to Paris. One was Paris at night, and he would also do a lot of winter scenes that reminded people of Russia, and he was openly nostalgic for Russia. Here he was painting a lot from memory. So here we have Paris at night. Next to you we have one of his winter scenes. And next to me is another scene that he enjoyed painting. He did this a lot, which was musicians around a campfire. These are all oil on board. These works are still very popular. The best auction estimate I could give you would be on these 2 pieces next to me, the Parisian scene and the musicians around the campfire, about $10,000 to $15,000 each at auction.
Really? Oh my God. Really? Okay.
And the one next to you...
That's exciting.
And the one next to you, I would put it a little less, probably closer to like $5,000 to $10,000. Only because there's just a little bit less going on there.
Yeah.
So altogether, that would be around $25,000 to $40,000 at auction for the grouping.
That's really exciting.
His work has sold in the millions of dollars.
I have a painting that was done in Taos, New Mexico by Bert Phillips. My grandmother bought this in the 30s. She bought it directly from the artist, and I have a thank you letter from the artist right here.
Some paintings don't just capture a landscape. They capture the moment an artist finds the place they were meant to spend their life. And that's exactly the story behind this piece by Bert Phillips, one of the founding fathers of the legendary Taos art colony. Phillips wasn't born in the West at all. He grew up in Hudson, New York in 1868, a kid who could draw before he could do much else. His talent took him to the Art Students League in New York and later to Paris, where he trained alongside artists like Joseph Henry Sharp and Ernest Blumenschein. But everything changed when he returned to America and set out on a sketching trip heading west. The plan was to end up in Mexico. He never made it past Taos, New Mexico. The land, the light, the people, Phillips felt all of it in his bones. By 1898, he moved there permanently, becoming the first artist to settle in Taos and a founding member of what would become one of America's most influential art colonies. And that emotion, that reverence, lives inside the painting brought in. An oil on board, beautifully composed and deeply romantic, likely created years before the guest's grandmother purchased it directly from Phillips himself. The provenance is remarkable. The original check, the thank you letter, the uninterrupted history. It isn't just a Western painting. It's a cornerstone of the Taos art story, painted by the man who started it all.
Once they got there, I think they decided that was it for them. That was where they wanted to stay. By 1898, I believe, Phillips had settled as a full-time resident in Taos. Phillips was one of the first artists, actually the first artist, to move to Taos and was a founding member of that artist colony and really devote the rest of his life to painting in that landscape. He was just so taken by it. And that's what we see in his work. He has a reverence for the subject. He has a romanticism, and I think you can feel the emotion that he felt.
Absolutely.
And there really weren't any tourists or galleries in Taos at that point. So the way that these artists became known was by kind of banding together and exhibiting their work in other cities. And then they became more well-known, and then they created a real demand for the work, and so the paintings were selling very quickly, which also leads me to think that he probably painted this some years before your grandmother purchased it, but probably wasn't sitting in a studio for all that long. This is special not only because it's a lovely painting, but because of the unbroken chain of provenance. The fact that you have the letter that he wrote to your grandmother, and even the original check where she paid him for the painting. I would expect a price tag on this for a retail value, which would be your insurance value in this case, of $35,000.
Okay. Great. $300,000 to $35,000. Pretty good investment.
Sure is.
One Bob Ross painting that stood out? A beautiful Alaskan scene of the Northern Lights.
This painting was hanging in my parents' home, and we gained it at home in 2012 and stuck it in the closet for 4 years. The Kenai Peninsula had a 7.1 earthquake.
Wow.
And we had a set of moose horns hanging above our bed. And after the earthquake, we decided that we're taking that down. The painting came out of the closet, and we hung it up.
Most people discover Bob Ross on a TV screen. This family discovered him in a closet after an earthquake shook moose antlers off their wall. Only then did they notice a small signature in the corner, Ross 79, and that changed everything. Before he became a household name, Bob Ross was just a quiet, soft-spoken painter from Florida who learned the wet-on-wet technique in the Air Force and mastered it long before America knew his voice. He believed painting shouldn't be intimidating. It should feel joyful, forgiving, almost meditative. That philosophy later became The Joy of Painting, his show that debuted in 1983 and taught millions that a happy little accident could still become art. What many people don't know is this. Once the TV show began, every painting Ross created belonged to the Bob Ross Company. So the works he produced before 1983, the ones he made as a rising artist, rarely show up today, especially outside Alaska and the Pacific Northwest. They're fragments of the period before he became a cultural icon. And that's what makes this painting so special. It's an oil on canvas, fully executed in Ross's signature wet-on-wet style, the technique that allowed him to complete a landscape like this one in under 30 minutes. The brushwork, the mood, the effortless layering are unmistakably early Bob Ross. This isn't just a painting pulled out of a closet. It's a piece of the Bob Ross story that almost stayed hidden forever.
Under half an hour, you could have an incomplete painting. It's been reported that Bob Ross painted over 30,000 paintings during his lifetime, which is a crazy number of paintings. In 1983, he started doing his Joy of Painting TV show. From that time forward, all the paintings he did were owned by the Bob Ross Company. All of his previous paintings are kind of on the open market. We don't see them that often in the lower 48 states.
Okay.
I would give an auction estimate for this painting of $15,000 to $20,000.
Wow. That is amazing. That's incredible.
$15,000 to $20,000 is a conservative estimate. For particularly good ones, which this is, I could easily see it hitting $25,000, maybe even $30,000. Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Isn't it crazy?
That is crazy.
This is a portrait of my great-aunt Honor, which for my whole life growing up was leaning against the wall in the dining room. I now know that it was 1963 when they walked it into the house, and I'm sure my mother said, just set it there for now until we figure out what to do with it, and that turned into 50 years.
And it never moved?
Never moved. It was not in great shape, it was sagging, it was very dirty, and it just recently has been with a professional conservator, and it is just so much improved.
And she is quite beautiful. What can you tell me about her?
She never married. She and another sister were both spinsters, but were quite entrepreneurial. Born in Chicago, but they lived in Waco for many years. And together with another family member, had a very successful bookstore and tea room in Waco. She was a big promoter of literature that she liked. And one person that she particularly liked was a very well-known Irish novelist in the late 1800s, early 1900s named George Moore.
Although once obscure, this portrait recently gained attention after being discovered leaning against a wall since 1963. This is Honor, the portrait that dazzled enthusiasts and professionals alike. She faces us squarely, collarbones lit, and in her hands is a single peacock feather, which was traditionally used to represent renewal and rebirth. The composition's subtle drama is impressive. In 1912, Charles Courtney Curran signed and dated the canvas in the lower right corner. Curran's most well-known works feature bright outdoor scenes with airy figures wearing white dresses, which were inspired by the modern French trends he picked up in Paris. His paintings can be found in the Smithsonian and the Metropolitan Museum. He frequently depicts elegant women and sunny landscapes. However, the palette in this particular painting is restrained but beautiful, with deep blues and greens that allow the subject's warm flesh tones to glow flawlessly, while the handling of the cloth and face combines elegant brushwork with careful modeling. According to the current owner, this oil-on canvas was sagging and filthy, but it has been expertly conserved with a significant improvement. It was insured for roughly $5,000 during the conservation process, a silent victory that increases the value and revitalizes the portrait.
The cost of what we were going to be spending around $5,000.
Have you checked into any values of late?
When we discovered that it was Curran, we looked him up, saw that he was a well-known artist in the Metropolitan Museum and the Smithsonian and other major museums, but all of the work we saw was his more well-known work, outdoor airy scenes, blue skies, people in white dresses and things. So completely different than this, that although we see that there's value, we really had no comparison.
Well, I would think that in a retail replacement insurance value, you would expect to see this at $125,000 to $150,000.
That's fantastic. Well, since she's always going to be part of the family, I guess I'll be calling my insurance agent Monday, first thing.
Good idea.